Hey, welcome to the Citizen Mike Show. Thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate it. My name is Mike Brodinsky, and usually I've got a split screen going with a guest on the show, but not this time. We're going to do it just you and me. Got three things I want to talk to you about. The first has to do with the town's budget. The mayor released his proposed budget on April 1. We're producing this show on April 2nd, Saturday. The Record Journal had a good story this morning summarizing the highlights of the budget as the mayor presented it to the reporter and as written up in the mayor's press release that accompanied the budget. I encourage you to go and read that story because this episode of the Citizen Mike Show assumes you have sort of done that. Well, the mill rate goes up 0.52 mils. That means that car taxes could go up, $150 to $200 per car. That's primarily because of revaluation. That's a story we covered earlier in the year. The used car market has been really hot and the value of used cars have gone way up. Some say on an average of 25%. And of course, the more that your car is worth, the more taxes you're going to pay. Add to that a little bit of a bump in the mill rate, and you may be surprised about what your car taxes is. But I figured it out using some hypothetical numbers, and I think the range is going to be between $150 and $200 extra in car tax, depending on the kind of car you have. House taxes, average home might go up about $100 per year. And whenever taxes go up even a little bit, there's always some sort of a buzz. Well, what would it take in order to freeze the mill rate? A mill rate increase of 0.52 equates to about $2.4 million. I'm rounding that. $2.4 million that the town would have to find, the town council would have to find either in budgetary cuts or in extra revenue that the mayor didn't project. But combined, there needs to be a package of about 2.4 million. I'm sure someone will ask at a council meeting and the comptroller will refine that, but it's going to be close. Now, when a budget comes out, some people ask, what about the pool? What about community pool? Is that going to open? Is there money in the pool? Money in the budget for the pool? Hey, there's no money in the budget to reopen the pool. There's no money in the budget to rebuild the pool. Community pool is dead. It's over. We got to get used to that. So forget about the pool and this budget. Move on. Okay, I will. So the Record Journal reporting says that town expenses go up by about $3.6 million. Well, that's true, but it's the Board of Ed. Their budget takes up about 3.2 million of that 3.6, and general government, that's everything that's left, they add only about $400,000 to the added total expenditures of that 3.6 million that was reported in the Record Journal story this morning. But some of the same old budget issues remain in this budget. First, according to the Record Journal reporting, the mayor said that he's reducing the town's reliance on reserves, but he's not really. The mayor is assigning $6.4 million from our fund balance into the budget, and he's adding that to the department budgets. And it sounded like the mayor was trying to reduce that amount that he assigns from the fund balance, but he's not. This is about the same amount he always assigns from the fund balance. So this is no reform. Nothing much has changed here at all. This is business as usual, the same old sort of budget that he always presents. The administration also from time to time, and his supporters on the council, would lead you to believe that this saves taxes by using general fund money or by assigning general fund money to the budget. It saves taxes, but it really doesn't. It saves taxes if the money from the reserves was actually spent in lieu of new taxes, but it's not spent. That means in order for the town to break even at the end of this fiscal year, keeping in mind that 6.4 million, the town would have to replace that 6.4 million in order just to break even. So throughout the course of this coming fiscal year, 22-23, the town would have to come in under budget with a combination of savings, and it would have to realize unpredicted revenues, which combined totaled 6.4 million. And if it didn't do that, if it was unable to do that, it would show an operating loss. And maybe I confused you, I hope not. Let me give you an example. Here it comes. So supposing you're planning your budget for the year. You have a savings account, you got a checking account. And for the year, when you plot out your expenses and your income, you see that you could use an extra $100 from your savings account. So you assign the $100 from the savings account. Actually, you transfer it over maybe to your checking account. And through the year, if you spend that $100, your savings account balance is going to drop. It's going to drop, and that's a deficit for you. However, if at the end of the year, you don't need that $100, you put the $100 back into the savings account and you break even. But if you spent any of that $100, you've got an operating deficit. If in the course of the year, you not only had the $100 left, but you're able to get a little more revenue in and you cut down your expenses, you end up with $5 more, you would take the 100 plus the 5, put it back into your savings account, and you would have an operating surplus of that $5. The $100 would be replaced and $5 more. Well, it's kind of the same with municipal finances. Now, the next issue that just doesn't go away, which is I see a problem that impacts the efficiency of the town, is how the capital non-recurring fund is handled. That is still an issue. The capital non-recurring fund, as you know, is a pot of money that the town contributes to every year that funds the construction of big ticket items, usually having to do with the improvement of land, roads, bridges, sidewalks, lately traffic lights, guardrails, stuff like that. Under the law, that account is supposed to be organized on a project by project basis. A project is different than a program. Program is, hey, let's just put aside $1 million for paving. But the way it should work is there should be a sidewalk project. Redo the sidewalks on a certain street from a certain corner to a certain corner, and a good budget would have a targeted start date and a targeted end date. That's a real project, and that's how the law is set up. That's not how Wallingford does it. Wallingford puts money in the capital non-recurring fund on a program basis, not all the time, but often, and that leads to the stockpiling of money, and that leads to projects being delayed, maybe not getting off the ground for years and years. That's still a problem. It's not as bad as it was, but that is still a problem. The Record Journal also reported that the mayor said that the unassigned fund balance should be 10% of expenditures, according to some credit rating agencies. We went into this topic, I think, earlier this year and in prior years. And I would like to read what the mayor is reading. Just a quick reminder that how much we have in reserves in the unassigned fund balance, the loose change, the money that's free and clear of all other commitments and assignments and encumbrances. How much we have is one criterion that the credit agencies will look at. But the credit agencies just don't look at the unassigned balance, according to my reading, which goes into what more than one credit rating agency says. They look at all reserves. That would include, but not be limited to, the unassigned fund balance, the Board of Ed's 2% fund, the capital non-recurring fund, the CRA fund, and other funds that are out there. So I'm not sure what the mayor's point is in saying, oh, look out about this 10% of the unassigned fund balance. We have to sort of watch that. I think he may be advising the council not to cut revenues from his budget, or not to tinker with the mill rate, or not to take money away from the capital non-recurring fund and use it for operations. I think he's trying to warn them that he thinks the unassigned fund balance is as low as he wants it to get. So if there's too much tinkering here, maybe watch for a veto. I think that's what's going on. There was another comment in the Record Journal reporting, the mayor is the source of this, that it was really bad information. It's not the reporter's fault. The reporter, I'm sure, copied it down right and got the gist of what the mayor was saying, but really bad stuff. And it just absolutely has to be corrected. The information had to do with a pension and how the town needed to put more than $500,000 into the pension fund. Town puts a lot of money into the pension fund every year. But the mayor said that this contribution to the pension fund reflects the town's ongoing efforts to rebuild the value of the pension trust that was lost in the 2008 market crash. And this is just, I don't know where the mayor gets this stuff, but I think he was taking advantage of a young reporter here. Hey, before the market crash, the value of the pension trust, I'm rounding numbers now, was about 146 million. That was before the crash. Then after the crash, or in the middle of it, as of July 1 in 2009, the value of the pension trust was about 122 million. So it went down from 146 million rounding to 122 million. But by 2013, the pension trust value had fully recovered. And now, as of the end of the last fiscal year, the value of the pension trust has more than doubled the low point. It's roughly $270 million. So again, I don't know where the mayor is coming up with the notion that we are rebuilding the value of the pension trust because of the crash. We're not really. Then there was some confusion about whether or not the mayor had put money from the ARPA grant into the budget. He did not. There is some discussion, a couple of references in the budget to ARPA funds being used for some equipment purchases and so on. But no ARPA money was really appropriated or put into the budget by the mayor. And the budget doesn't call for expenses from the ARPA money either. It was just a point of discussion. ARPA money should be used, it should be put in its own fund so it's easily tracked. And so it's very transparent as to where the money is going and the timing of all that. I'm sure it'll happen that way. ARPA money will be put into its own separate fund and money will be appropriated out of that according to the usual appropriation procedures, which according to the law department is the mayor recommends what he wants to do and the council acts on that recommendation, either approves it with 5 votes or does not. Let's quit the budget discussion for a minute. I want to introduce to you a candidate who is running for the Secretary of State. Her name is Maritza Bond. I want to tell you a little bit about her. I interviewed her, and you'll see that interview in just a couple minutes. But before we put that on, I just want to tell you about Maritza. She currently serves as the Director of Health for the City of New Haven. She writes on her website that she's been on the front lines in the fight against COVID and all that involves. She currently manages an annual budget of about $20 million. With more money pending, and supervises a workforce of 100 employees or so. And for all her efforts, Maritza Bond was named New Havener of the Year in 2021 by the New Haven Independent. Now, prior to joining the City of New Haven, Maritza served as the Director of Health and Social Services for the City of New Haven. And under her administration, she led 11 diverse regulatory divisions and social services programs, according to her website. And there's more detail that you can look at on her website. She previously served as the Executive Director of the Eastern Area Health Education, Inc., working out of Eastern Connecticut. She graduated from Southern Connecticut State University with a Bachelor of Science degree in Public Health. She earned a master's degree in public health from the University of Connecticut. She grew up in Fairhaven. Let's check in on that interview, which I videotaped about a week ago. Here you go. 3, 2, 1. Hey, Maritza Bond, thanks for coming on the Citizen Mike Show. We appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me. Such a pleasure. I heard
No,
great things about you.
as a Democratic candidate for Secretary of State, this is terrific. So you decided to announce today, is that?
Correct. I just announced on Capitol Report, really excited to be in this journey. I actually was exploring for almost 6 months and, been building relationships and just hearing from the people of what they would like to see from the next Secretary of the State and building my platform. So just excited that I have received the support thus far and looking forward to getting to Hartford.
Well, I just want you to know before we get any further that I consider the Capitol Report a serious competitor of the Citizen Mike Show. So I'm a little
sorry.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But I did watch a Capitol Report this morning, Sunday at 10:30. And there's a couple of things you said I want to follow up on. And you mentioned the small business unit at the Secretary of State's office. Why did you mention that? What's going on there? What's in your mind?
Yeah, so as I've been researching the office and getting to know some of the integral pieces, one of the things that sparked an interest is that when Lieutenant Governor was actually the Secretary of the State, she had a small business unit that served as a repository for small women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, and just small businesses in general. And we saw firsthand during the pandemic how impacted small businesses were. And so to be able to reinstate that office so that we can better streamline resources and offer technical support so that entrepreneurs who want to do business in Connecticut have a central repository out of the Secretary of the State office would be something that I'm looking forward to do. And so I'm looking forward to the opportunity, if given, to be able to reinstate that small business unit and be that resource for small businesses.
What happened to it? Why did it go away?
There was a lot of, our current Secretary of the State, I have to say, has done a phenomenal job given the resources that she has. When you're in leadership, and especially in government leadership, as I know, in the last 6 years, I have served in 2 government offices, there's tough decisions that we have to make. Why that decision was made, of course, I do not know directly. However, is grossly underfunded. And one of the other platforms that I am going to be pushing for is for autonomy around the CRD funding so that we can make sure we can push for resources that are needed at the Secretary of the State's office.
On Capitol Report, you also mentioned that you would use the office to combat misinformation. I think you said Republican misinformation. Given the brevity of that interview on Capitol Report, you didn't have a chance to explain what you meant. We got all the time in the world. So
yes.
What did you mean by that?
One of the things that we saw firsthand as a government official now in the city of New Haven is the misinformation that was coming and stemming from different parties, right? Primarily the Republican Party. And we saw firsthand the misinformation that was utilized on social media and the disadvantage that really had on the community having so much confusion around how to even protect themselves or their family. And so one of the strategies that we use, and it's a best practice, actually evidence-based model, it's called social marketing model. And it's a way that you take a traditional media as well as social media combined so you can ensure that you're getting your message out. But most importantly, making sure that we are sending consistent messaging. So my vision is to create an advisory commission of local registrars and town clerks that will be part of the process of making sure that we are all sending the same message consistently, and then also using social media as our advantage, as well as traditional outlets, because we want to make sure that we're touching everyone equitably.
So I just want to get a little more specific as the kind of misinformation you're talking about. You're talking about affecting voting? Is that what you meant? Or
well, across the country, we are seeing that our voters, there's a lot of opposition around oppressing individuals' ability to be able to vote. Luckily, we don't have a major issue here in Connecticut. However, we just had a recent bill that was proposed that around requiring government ID, and so that level of barrier can create additional issues. And what we want to do is make sure that people understand that there are no voter fraud. So sharing consistent messaging around our integrity around voting and what we promote around voting, and also how to navigate the local polls so that individuals can have better voter turnout. One of the things that we see consistently is that there's certain populations that are just not coming out to vote. And number one, people are just not civically engaged to the level that they should be, because there was a lot of government mistrust in the last few years. And so we need to regain that trust. And I was able to demonstrate that government still works in the midst of a pandemic, and be effective in that role. And also being transparent when government gets tough. If you watch the news, I have been very vocal on the media, and even will hold my own team accountable when things go wrong, because we want to make sure that we're supporting our community. And I want to be able to bring that to Hartford when we're educating the people around the importance about voting locally and why their vote counts, and the power that people have to hold local officials accountable when they're elected into office.
So what sort of people don't have a picture ID? Here in Wallingford, a lot of people, that's kind of strange. It's a suburb. People drive cars. They have picture ID on their licenses. And I'm not sure everyone in Wallingford understands the extent to which folks may not have a
Correct.
picture ID. Who are they? How many are there? What's the nature of the problem there?
So one of the things that we see, and I've had the opportunity in the last 20 years, to be honest with you, I'm an urban girl at heart, but I actually worked in the Naugatuck Valley, Eastern Connecticut, and Greater Valley, just in general, worked and touched almost every corner of the state. So it does vary, to your point, right? In certain areas, when you're in certain suburban towns, is not an issue. But when you have populations that do not have access to transportation, we have transportation insecurity, and individuals that just do not need to have a government ID because they don't have a vehicle necessarily. So they don't have to get a license or do not need one for day to day. And right now we have infrastructure in place that and it's multifaceted to be able to show in one's identity. So why complicate the process further when you have certain communities that lack the ability to pay for a government issue ID that not necessarily need one?
Yeah, I don't think that's going to, a voter ID requirement, I don't think that's going to pass in Connecticut, but it's going to be a battle that's going to come up, again and again and again and again, I think.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think that goes back to civic engagement and education, right? So how do we send a consistent messaging across the state consistently of what is required and acceptable as a form of ID?
I want to talk about voting lines, if there's any disparities across the state. I want to add, part of the same question, is every jurisdiction in Connecticut up to speed on modern voting machines? Do we have enough? And at the same time, do you see or know of any disparities across the state on the level of training in the registrar's office? So I'd like you to hit three things: the voting lines, the machines, and the training.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of my platform. And one of the things that's really critical is to listen to what the registrars and town clerks needs are, really doing a full assessment. As you know, our tabulators are like 20 years old, or many people know that there was a federally funded initiative, and we were able to get them across Connecticut. And there's an opportunity for the Secretary of the State's office to utilize some of the CRD funding that comes in to be able to support the infrastructure so that we can maintain our systems as well as keeping them modernized. As that will help with the lines that we see in certain communities. I think we also need to do a full assessment on whether we have enough polling stations in certain communities. And so one of the things that is critical for me is that we need to, number one, do full assessments as a first priority to see where the core issues are consistently, and identify those gaps, address those gaps, advocate for funding, and create an advisory commission that's going to be able to be consistent of local registrars and town clerks who are on the ground at, doing the real work, and be able to inform recommendations so that we can take that into consideration.
Yeah, I just want to readdress this issue of voting lines again, and I'm not sure there's really an answer to my question. But if, let's say, hypothetically, there are long voting lines in New Haven, mm-hmm. It may be, and not in Wallingford. I mean, we have 9 voting districts. I mean, we're lucky. You pretty much walk right in and walk right out, mm-hmm. and you walk quickly to avoid the politicians on the line. But in cities like New Haven and the larger cities, it's a local issue, isn't it? I mean, how much they want to spend and just a lot of local decisions. And as Secretary of State, other than the bully pulpit, are your hands tied as to what you can do to shorten those lines?
Listen, one of the things that we've been successful in my government role is knowing when to lead and knowing when to be a convener. And in that position, I will be a convener, because when we have a vested interest in democracy, and that's the core value, we have to come together to figure out solutions to addressing the problem and investing in those resources and streamlining them so that we can be able to be effective for the common cause. And I think that will work. And I think that's been successful for me these past 6 years as a government official. And I want to bring those skills as I become the Secretary of State.
Well, let's make that the final word. I appreciate you coming on the Citizen Mike Show. Good luck on the campaign trail. And we're going to follow your career right to the very end and hope everything works out for you.
Thank you so much. Follow me at maritzabond.com. Donate, help me qualify for the Citizens Election Program. I'm more than halfway there. So thank you all for have supported thus far.
Okay, thank you, Maritza Bond. We appreciate you coming on the Citizen Mike Show. I want to change the subject again to maybe the most significant topic of the decade facing the town of Wallingford and the Wallingford Town Council. Probably will be this decision dealing with ARPA funds will probably be the most important decision that councilors will make in their lifetime, because it involves $13 million all in one sort of concept, all in one topic. You go budget to budget to budget, and maybe you tinker around with $500,000 here or $1 million there, and the money seems to be replaced or spent the next year, and I don't know, you tend to forget about it. But ARPA money, $13 million in federal grant money that the town of Wallingford has wide latitude in using. What will happen to the money, and what will be the process that will be adopted to determine who gets what and how the money is spent, and will it be spent well? Well, one of the competitors for this $13 million is the business community, championed by Mayor Dickinson and the Economic Development Commission. And they, right from the beginning, have always said that they wanted the small businesses to soak up most, if not all, of this ARPA money, $13 million. And to be sure, the federal regulations governing ARPA do indicate that money can be used for this way, but that's not the only way it can be used. But in order for the town of Wallingford to distribute $13 million to businesses, or any number close to that, no matter what it is, whether it's 3 million, 5 million, 8 million to businesses, I would submit that the process needs to be transparent and squeaky clean, and I don't think it is. I don't think it's well thought out. I don't think it's thorough. But we're heading down this road, and right now it seems unstoppable. And my specific complaints with the process are, first, the applications that small businesses are being asked to fill out to get this grant money. It's good that they're asked to fill out an application, but it's not so good if the application is imperfect and flawed so that people will get money when maybe they really shouldn't get money. It's not a good application if it leads people, whoever's deciding who the winners and losers are, if people deciding on these applications and grading them and scoring them begin to give out grant applications like candy, maybe that's not good, although the business community would say, no, that's very good. Give it out like candy. That's the purpose of it. Give it out like candy. But remember, a dollar given to a business that maybe shouldn't get it is not going somewhere else. And it's all those somewhere else's that concern me. What's the problem with the applications? Well, first, they don't help sort out the successful businesses that could be quite lucrative from the struggling businesses that really need help. And under the current application, rich guys could get richer. There have been council meetings and there have been council subcommittee meetings dealing with ARPA, where struggling business owners have come to the microphone and have pled their case, and they were very heartfelt stories that I saw and heard. The problem is that the struggling businesses are not the only ones going to be getting the money, but the rich guys didn't come to the microphone. They didn't come and say, my gross revenue dropped from 3 million to 2 million. I'm doing pretty well, nevertheless. And I want $1 million in Wallingford money to replace my lost revenue. You know, in fact, I was even thinking of quitting the country club this year because of that revenue drop. Well, I'm being a little over the top here, but I need to make the point. The applications are the only way, and the information in the applications are the only way that the town of Wallingford and its committee of representatives, whoever they may be, it's the only way they can sort out who really deserves the money and who doesn't. And the only financial information asked for is the drop in gross revenues, not even the loss of profits, but the drop in gross revenues. That's problem number one. The town also hasn't articulated, expressed in writing, so that there's strict guidance for the people who are going to be deciding on the grants. There hasn't been criteria as to how the money should be doled out, other than perhaps this loss of revenue. There's no criteria that says we want to help struggling businesses, but we don't want to help businesses that are not struggling. We want to help businesses in hardship, but we don't want to help those that have bounced back nicely. Nowhere is that criteria laid out, leaving those that are deciding on these grants to their own discretion and their own sense of generosity with the community's money. That's a problem. There's no criteria. Reminding everyone here that basing a grant on loss of gross revenues or a drop in gross revenues can lead to a windfall. A drop, you're replacing $1 of gross revenues is more lucrative than replacing $1 of lost profits. Next, the problem with these applications is that they're not verified by tax returns or other financial documentation. The losses of revenue are self-declared. No audited financial statements, not even a QuickBook balance sheet and income statement over 3 or 4 years, nothing. It's all self-declared. Oh, the applicant has to sign under oath. And it's sad for me to think that any public official thinks that's an adequate basis on which to dole out millions and millions of dollars. But that's what's happening in Wallingford right now. The application does ask the applicants if they have received any other government benefit related to the pandemic. And the people that review these applications could have access to databases which would disclose which Wallingford businesses got assistance. But there is no indication whatsoever that anyone wants these application reviewers to look at those databases. Now, the mayor is going to be picking the individuals who are going to be judging and weighing these applications for business grants. And just with the loose controls that I've described, the lack of criteria, the lack of documentation, the lack of standards, there's room here for cronyism and the appearance that insiders have the inside edge. But look out, folks, if grants are given away like candy, some will say good, that's how it was intended. Others might feel that they were cheated because other causes, including their own business, may suffer. Hey, thanks for joining the Citizen Mike Show. We do appreciate it. We're going to see you next time. Thanks to WPAA, Susan Huizenga, and the crew down at the TV station for putting the Citizen Mike Show on. You can watch Citizen Mike Show on the WPAA channel, weeknights at 9. Hey, if it's night at night, it's Citizen Mike. Good night, everybody. Thanks.